We're still on day 2 of Dorothy Lewis's testimony in the Letecia Stauch trial. Watson's here to help me record. Let's go.
Now, the fact that she moves the body from the storage room to the Tiguan and then to the airport, is that an indication that she has the capacity to know right from wrong?
I don't feel qualified to conclude that. She certainly had the capacity to move it from one place to another.
If she's not qualified to conclude that, why is she here?
For one reason or another, and certainly it would seem to be for keeping it a secret of some sort. Whether or not she thought this was right or wrong, I just can't speculate.
Well, she knew that Al was coming home because she was picking him up, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And she knew that she had to move the body before Al got home, correct?
Perhaps the body was hidden. Yes,
Rational thinking?
that's a leap. Thinking, yes.
Okay.
Rational doesn't mean right or moral or proper. It just means rational. And yes, it was rational thinking. It was goal-oriented thinking. And it was rational and it worked.
Is she psychotic when she's making these decisions to rent a car and leave the body in the Tiguan at the airport?
Again, speculation. I don't know.
Again, that's your job. Speculation and you don't know. Like, does the prosecutor want to turn around and look at the jury and say, okay, case closed. She's not qualified, and as to whether or not the accused was psychotic, she doesn't know. She could still claim she was psychotic. Maybe she was psychotic during the offense, but as you know, there are problems with that too. And she previously said, I don't know what's in her head. Somebody counted it for me. I think it was 7 times. But then after the fact, and she's hiding it, and this doctor, this expert is saying, well, that would be speculation. I don't know.
And then about 4 p.m. that day, she leaves in the rental car and goes back to the airport. Do you remember seeing that?
Reading about it, perhaps, yeah.
Is it inconceivable that she's going back to check on the Tiguan to make sure no one's disturbed it?
Any speculation is possible.
Is that rational thinking?
You know, if a thing looks like a zebra, if it's got stripes, if 4 legs, you know what I'm getting at, right? You don't guess and say, well, it's a mammal, and so, you know, it could be a monkey. Like, come on.
Again, it suggests that she has the capacity to know that that she could be in great trouble if this were not hidden. You know, knowing right from wrong is such an.
She knows she can be in trouble if this is not hidden. Well, then she knows obviously that the law at least thinks it's wrong.
Abstract. It's hard to comment on that.
Technically, right and wrong are concepts, and I suppose you could call it an abstract concept. But here's the thing. We all live in communities, and we have collectively agreed on certain laws and rules. And if something is against the law in my community, for example, even if I think that thing is okay to do, I'm not going to do it because the law says, no, you can't do that. And we as a community have agreed on that. And we're not talking about, letting your dog off leash on a on leash park. We're talking about homicide. And the idea that that's wrong, I think is built into us. There's a book written by actually an acquaintance of mine on how in the military they discovered that they had to actually train soldiers to be able to kill because it really isn't natural for us to kill each other. It's not a natural thing. There's an inherent knowing that you don't do that. And you can, whatever you label it, you can call it right and wrong, or you can call it something else. But we know that. And soldiers have to actually be trained and psychologically conditioned so that they can do their jobs. The book I'm talking about is called On Killing by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. So, like this idea that it's an abstract concept, okay, if we're talking about community standards or, social norms, that's one thing. But we're talking about homicide. We're talking about a father and a mother and a community who are desperately looking for a little boy. And in order to not think that hiding this is wrong, it would require that you have zero empathy. So Letecia is showing her utter lack of empathy by continuing to hide and run. Right? So this is, I think this is the wrong argument that she's making. This is something you sort of mull over and philosophize over, after you've had 3 glasses of wine.
Again, that's one interpretation.
And of course, that didn't happen here, correct?
That she stayed with him?
Right.
She says that's one interpretation. Isn't it the goal here to find out the truth? What happened? The best interpretation, the thing that fits the evidence the best? Is she saying, yeah, that's everybody else's interpretation, but except mine instead? If I got on the stand and said this person is a threat or not a threat, and didn't explain why, and didn't address all of the elements that were contradictory to what I was saying, I mean, I'd be laughed out of there. You can't just get up in court and say, yeah, never mind that the evidence doesn't quite fit, and only accept my interpretation. That's ridiculous.
Is that evidence that she's suffering some kind of psychosis? The fact that she goes to an isolated spot to hide the body?
Maybe, don't know.
Is it also evidence that she may not be suffering from psychosis? The fact that she knows to go to an isolated spot and hide the body?
Maybe.
So maybe both ways. Maybe.
Not in her best interest. Again, right from wrong is abstract, and I hesitate.
All right. If this doctor, if the capacity to know right from wrong is part of the legal definition of insanity, and this doctor is saying it's an abstract concept, and I really can't speculate on that. Why is she an expert in any legal insanity case? She's saying she can't address that element. She can't address the test.
And she then is talking to detectives at the El Paso County Sheriff's Office saying, I'm on my way. I want to come down and interview you. Remember that evidence?
Again, I've probably read it, but I don't specifically remember that, but I'll certainly believe you.
And
I could see if your assessment needed to be focused on the actual time of the offense. I could see looking through all the material leading up, all the material in the case, but really focusing in on the just before, during, and after the offense, and then reviewing everything else to make sure you've got a full picture and to make sure that you're not missing anything. So I wouldn't be surprised if an expert didn't remember, a thing that happened a week later. I am surprised at the times that she doesn't remember information clearly connected to the day before, the day of, and the day after. And the other thing I would think, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but the other thing I would think she would be looking for is if she thought that the accused was in a psychotic state at the time of the offense, would she be looking for, okay, at what point did the accused come out of that psychotic state and what happened then? And I'm not hearing that either.
in that interview, she alludes to the fact that Eduardo took a suitcase. Remember that portion of the interview?
You'd have to continue on.
I would think that a psychiatrist of all people would jump on that portion of the interview. When I heard that interview and I heard that piece of information, I nearly fell off my chair. How could a psychiatrist who's actually looking for things, how do you miss that?
But I find crazy what you find logical.
Well, that was insulting.
The whole story of Eduardo is crazy.
Yeah, that's why she changed it later on and came up with Quincy Brown and some other stories, right?
I don't know why. Because she realized it was crazy and then changed it.
Yeah.
Less crazy.
She says that like a question. Isn't she supposed to know? And is she not picking up on the fact that Letecia only has to lie enough to get one step ahead of everybody to escape the last lie?
In my opinion, that's evidence of stupidity. If you want to cover up something that you've done, you don't drive back to the body. You just don't do that.
But she did.
Yeah, it's not too smart and not too well thought out, but she did.
That doesn't mean that she was psychotic. Stupidity and psychosis are different things. Stupidity and knowing right from wrong are two different things. And when you think about it, to go back to the body and drive it out of state and put it in a body of water that she hopes will take that body away. I mean, it empties into the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, maybe it'll show up on Mexico, and then Google searches Mexican drug cartel members. That's obvious planning, and not only is it planning and execution, it's pretty complicated.
Is it not conceivable that I didn't hide the body good enough? I need to go get it. I'm driving to Florida, be better off in the Gulf of Mexico than where it was at.
Yep.
Is that inconceivable?
You've just conceived it so that clearly you've thought about it. I don't think it's the smartest thing to do or the best way to hide your implication in a death, to drive back to where the body has been.
I wonder what she thinks is the best way to hide a body. Like, really, I can't believe this conversation is happening.
In my mind, it's incredibly peculiar behavior to drive that distance with a body, and the body of a child that you allegedly loved, in the back of your car. There is
It's not peculiar. It's criminal. And this is part of the one of the crimes that she's on trial for. And then the doctor's saying, you know, she doesn't know whether she has the capacity or not and all this stuff. Why is she on the stand?
That evidence that she has the capacity to know right from wrong when she once again is hiding Gannon's body.
again, I don't know if that shows she knows right from wrong.
And then his body was discovered on March 17.
All right, we're going through this. I don't know if that shows right from wrong. Over and over and over. She could, considering how she rambles and goes off topic and is not a witness who's easily controlled, she's demonstrated she's willing to just blab out things. She could say, no, that particular thing wouldn't show me the capacity one way or the other. But here's what does show you that she didn't have the capacity. So far, she has not said that.
You go down. Yeah. Do all of you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're sometimes, like Maria called me,
And then the bed.
no, like Maria sometimes calls him Bendy.
She is calling them B-A-D jail. Like a bed.
That would be like, it's like Spanish for asshole, but
Here they're already talking about alters, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Dr. Lewis said all of you. So at what, like, this had to be then after the diagnosis, because the doctor wouldn't endorse that by saying all of you. When was the diagnosis?
I don't. And you're not aware of any Russian kind of aspect of you.
She asked her, you're not aware of a Russian accent. Like that's a very specific question. If Letecia was not aware of a Russian accent, then the doctor just put that in her brain. If she was aware of a Russian accent or speaking Russian, then okay. But here's the thing. Why ask the question you're not aware when in another interview Letecia said, oh yeah, I spoke Russian to somebody. So does the doctor clarify for the jury at some point as to which dates these things happened and whether or not any of this predated, as the doctor said in her testimony before, these signs must predate contact with the doctor and must predate the crime. So I'm still waiting for evidence that shows that.
You don't remember.
I know it sounds crazy,
No, it doesn't.
but like, okay, so like,
Letecia says, I know it sounds crazy. Yeah, that's exactly how she wants it to sound.
Important to you, would it not, if she's saying that and then lo and behold, there is a jail call where she's speaking Russian, that could corroborate what she's saying, right?
Well, it could. I have to see it kind of in a big.
Letecia has a history of lying, and this doctor knows that. And Letecia is doing what she's always done, which is, oh, this happened, and the ability to check the proof isn't right here in this moment, hoping that the person doesn't check. But you see, it's this doctor's job to check. She has to check. And if this thing was true, this would help the defense. So why not check? But it sounds like she didn't.
This is the first time I'm aware that I did not recall that she had mentioned the Russian at this point. But
Hang on a second. She just said this is the first time, and correct me if I'm hearing wrong, I'm having trouble hearing her. This is the first time she's aware of this Russian accent or Russian entity. But earlier, she asked Letecia, so you're not aware of a Russian accent? So what the heck?
And there's nothing in the record whatsoever, including the records that were given to you by defense, that indicates the defendant has ever spoken to anyone in Spanish.
as far as I could determine, but I sure wanted to know.
Yeah, sure.
It's possible.
Yep.
Well, hang on a second. Based on this doctor's own testimony, there must be evidence that these things occurred prior to contact with the doctor, prior to the crime, and there is none, yet she's interested in hearing if there's some now. Well, if there's evidence now, it wasn't there before, right? By her own testimony, it's not going to prove anything.
Is it possible you do that when on state? I was in a one state country state in one of these states where you would never know. Oh yeah, I've said that definitely. I know.
Oh my gosh! Is it possible you're in this state? Is it possible? Let me feed you the symptoms that let me tell you what you need to fake.
I was not an intention to hurt Shannon.
Intention.
Never. No, absolutely not. I love Shannon. I took care of these kids since they were 5 and 2.
I took care of these kids. There we go. And that's part of her grievance.
These kids from coast to coast, country to country. That's not what do I gain out of hurting a child? Absolutely nothing. I lose everything in my entire life. And not only is it about me being hurt, but other people around me. And if I'm sitting
First, she talks about what she loses, what she's going to lose. And this is after she's caught, right? And the other people being hurt is like an afterthought that she remembered, oh, gee, I better throw this in here. And no mention of, what Gannon suffered.
They're telling me that I care about all these people. There are other people hurting this. If I was going to hurt somebody, why would it not be these people that are hurting people? Right? No, it would not be to hurt a child. You see what I'm saying? Absolutely not. It would not be an intention to be like, okay, that's it, you're done for the day. No, that's.
Even a psychopath knows that society, that everybody, unless you're also a psychopath, agrees that hurting a child is a terrible thing, that you should never, ever, ever, ever hurt a child or kill a child. So she's showing right here that, yeah, she does know that's wrong. She does know that the evidence is right there, right in front of the doctor, But she's saying, oh, I don't know if she knows right and wrong because it's an abstract concept. She knows. And she knows enough to state that, to build herself into somebody she's not, or make people think she cares so much about children and that she would never do this. She clearly right here knows it's wrong. That, I think, is unmistakable.
That's not how. I mean, you don't take somebody out and go shopping, do this, do that. You don't go buy somebody Valentine's candy.
Here we go. So Letecia is saying, giving her rationale why she couldn't have done this, or if she did, she wasn't in her right mind. But here she is saying, you don't take somebody shopping. Well, doesn't this explain the proof of life photos? Oh, they went on the hike and took a selfie and everybody looks happy and they're a wonderful family. And we went to Petco together and we're out shopping. I don't think Gannon, in the state he was in, thought shopping would be fun. Letecia thought that people would perceive that as a fun thing because she likes it, clearly. And she wants everybody to see we're normal, everything was fine. So, I mean, certainly don't look at me as the killer. She's just explaining right here how she's setting it up the way she set it up.
I had this kid in Mexico, Alaska, all these places, not a scratch on their body. Tell me.
There shouldn't be a scratch on their bodies, no matter where she took them. Earlier, she had said something about, well, if you want to kill somebody, you take them to a different country. Kind of makes me wonder if she was thinking about it before.
Dad wanted me to leave and not even tell her. God, I should have just did it. Isn't that some really good idea? No, but at least we've been safe. At least we've been on the East Coast safe. Everybody safe. He wanted to go with me. He knew I was leaving. He wanted to go with me. He did. He said, "You're going back. Mommy and mom, I could stay with you."
If I'm hearing correctly, is she saying that Gannon wanted to run away with Letecia? That's outrageous, and it's actually disgusting under the circumstances.
He was like, "Just take me into your son, I cannot. It's kidnapping."
This kind of thing always makes me upset, because somebody who has taken the life of somebody else can then turn around and say anything they want about the victim, about what the victim did or said, and the victim isn't there to defend themselves, to dispute it. It's just another bit of tearing down the dignity of the victim.